Well, pleasure to welcome to the podcast Giancarlo Munaretto. Giancarlo, how you doing today, bud?
I'm great. How are you?
Doing well, man. Doing well. I'd love to hear the story of the first time you jumped into goal. Do you remember that?
Yeah, okay. So I played for kind of like my local town league back when I just first got to lacrosse. And I had played like midi actually for my first 2 years, and I started lacrosse like early sixth grade. And then end of seventh grade, because it was like a local team, they don't exist anymore. They turned a different team or something. But we didn't have a goalie, and my coach was like, okay, I need one of you guys to play goalie because we didn't have one. So we started like throwing tennis balls at us and just kind of doing reaction drills. And he was like, hey, you seem like pretty like naturally adept at this. Do you want to try it? And I was like, I don't know. I just thought it would be fun. I didn't know I was taking it seriously first. Took his pads. He had a stick for me. And I just hopped into it in practice, ended up really liking it. And I just remember getting in the car and my dad just like kind of looked at like all my gear and he just like didn't even say anything. And we just like went home.
All your MIDI gear.
Midi gear and then all the goalies, so they had extra goalie gear for
Oh,
me.
okay. All right.
And
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
saw it and he just like shook his head and just kept driving.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, a lot of times I've heard stories of like parents buying their kids like all like a new like player stick, right? And then like new all the new like field gear, and then they switch to goalie, and it's like, oh. But anyway, that's awesome. What do you think made you like naturally adept for the position?
I had a large hockey background and playing hockey since I was 3 years
Mm,
old.
okay.
So I think stick skills wise, like lacrosse came kind of naturally to me because I just
Right.
used to stick already.
Right.
But with goalie in general, I more like just like hand-eye coordination. I'm not really sure, but it just I just like it. And I like explosive movements, fast movements. That's always kind of been my thing. Like, yeah, I can do endurance and stuff, but it's like quick sprints and stuff has always kind of been my strong suit.
Yeah, well, that's what goalie's all about, right? And we're not the endurance athletes. We're the fastest in a little 6x6 bottle. So you pick the right position, I guess. I think you said sort of instantly you really liked goalie. What was it about the position that you liked so much?
I was really used to scoring goals, but then there's also this satisfaction I think we all know of making a save. And I think that like I had gotten my first warm up in. I still remember that practice like clear as day, but I got my warm up in. But like having my friends shoot on me and being able to like get a stop on kids that I know that I used to like pass around and score goals with, like there's just something about being able to like shut something down like that and do that for your teammates. And that satisfaction was just, I kind of fell in love with that.
Yeah, it's a pretty good feeling, huh?
Hmm.
On my team, like on the way our team worked, like when you made a save, whenever you made a save, like the team went nuts and they were just like, yeah, way to go, Damon. Was it like that for you? Did people like really have your back after every save?
My, yeah, my first like season, like when we had started playing games, I just remember that was one of the big things I definitely fell in love with. Like at the end of the game, everyone running up to you after a big win. Like, sure, at times it felt like that weight of like getting scored on your shoulders. But then when like you get some good saves and the team comes through and we win, like it's all together. Like having that hype up and having them give me that energy was kind of that. Yeah, it's an amazing feeling to have your teammates pick you up like that.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, right?
Hmm.
And it makes it all worth it because you're right. There's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of times where you do feel the weight of that pressure, right? And then it's sort of balanced out by that those good feelings and by those making of the saves. And like I always say, for parents and for young or coaches coaching young kids, like you got to go nuts after the saves because that's what sort of fuels the goalie and makes them like want to keep continue and keep going. Yeah. Love it. So how then, you started at sixth grade at goalie. How did you go about like learning once you decided like, all right, this goalie thing's for me? Like, how'd you go about learning how to make saves?
So initially, through like sixth and seventh grade, lacrosse was still a very secondhand sport for me. I was playing hockey all the time, year round for club and everything, and that was my main focus. But then, so like I didn't really have any like goalie training. It was more just I'd go to practice with my team and I would just take shots. And I had the goalie coach there, like there's like the main head coach of the team would just teach me kind of what he knew,
Hmm.
and he did a great job at that. And I progressed, but it really came end of seventh grade, early eighth grade. I kind of decided that I wanted to put a lot more focus into it. And then I talked to my club coach, and he knew a goalie who had just graduated from Elmhurst College. And we set up some like privates, and we would meet decently often. And he just started to like teach me like form and all that, because I pretty much had no form experience. It was just more like
Right.
getting there and getting to the ball.
Yeah, like you were just sort of relying on just raw athleticism, and he sort of taught you the basics, right? Stance and positioning and things like that.
Definitely.
All right, cool. Yeah. Love it. And then after I imagine after that initial like basic training, let's call it, like your game got a lot better. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely, like significantly like increased.
Yeah, because it's, once you kind of learn just even the basics or have like some idea of like what you're doing out there, even if it's not perfect, and obviously it's not going to be because it's a really hard position, but just having some idea of like how to stand and like how to move and all that stuff like gives you a leg up. So that's cool that you're able to get that training. And that's not that long ago, right? I mean, you're now like in your freshman year of high
I'm
school,
going to sophomore year now,
going
or
into
I'm in
sophomore
sophomore.
year. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Um, well, very cool. So, any like early issues being a goalie that like you were really trying to overcome?
I would definitely say the number one factor early was my mental game.
Mm,
I was always very emotional player on the field in terms of like in any position, any sport I've ever played, like hockey, like lacrosse too. I really like try to like put everything I have on the field, all that. But getting scored on for me initially, it feels like I'm letting the whole team down. Obviously, I think we all know that feeling too. And it's like sometimes you can do things about it, sometimes you can't. But back then, I didn't really know that like it was my job to keep my team's morale up and my
mhm.
defense's morale. So I'd get scored on, and I would like bang on my helmet or something, or like outwardly just like sulk and kind of be down. And that mental aspect of really just like getting that like, next save mentality, I didn't really adapt until late, even like before my freshman season, like 6 months before my freshman season.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when I was your age, I didn't play lacrosse. I played like basketball, and that was what I did as well. It was like whenever I made a mistake, I was like really hard on myself. And like I would like yell at myself and I'd do those sort of verbal, not verbal, but physical outbursts and slamming the ball down or doing that. And I think I did it because like I didn't want like everyone else to get mad at me. Like so I would get mad at me. You know what I mean? So I would be mad at me so my coaches couldn't be mad at me or the other team couldn't be mad at me. But to your point, like, and especially as the goalie in a position of leadership, like everyone's looking at you to see how you act, right? And when you act like that, it brings everyone else down. So that's a good realization that you're able to have at a young age. And so how did you go about then like overcoming that?
I actually, so my fall of my freshman year last year, I that was like when I really started to play actual club, and I tried out for the club team near me. And first day, I played pretty well. I was fine. Just 3 day tryout, and I just remember every time that I got scored on, I was getting upset at myself. Mental game, doing that thing, banging on my helmet. That was something I always like step off and kind of like hit myself, like wake up, like what's going on? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Instead of just like taking a breath and thinking about it. And then about a week later, I got an email that I'd been cut. So I didn't have really any club team then. And like I talked to my coach about it, the goalie coach from Elmhurst College, Harry Meredith, great guy, amazing guy. And he kind of talked me through it. And we never talked about mental game before because we were so focused always on getting my baseline form, because I
Right.
was pretty much like before I met him, I had nothing. So we never really come to that problem because they had so many other things to work on. And we sat and we spent that entire lesson, I think, talking about it and talking me through it. And looking back, I would definitely not have picked me either. I know my actions, but I think that learning that hard way kind of really made me think like I need to rethink that how I'm doing this and rethink what my like mental position is on the field.
Mm-hmm. Getting cut from a team can be like pretty devastating for a young athlete, right? I mean, that can be the end for many athletes, or it can be like the greatest motivator. Like it can go both ways. And I think for you, it went the route of motivation, right? So talk to me about how you use that to sort of motivate your game.
After that tryout, I maybe I spent a week sulking about it, but like right after we talked it through, I realized that like I set my goal on having a really great high school lacrosse season, which was like 4 or 5 months away from then, maybe 6. And I was getting shot on at least 3 days a week by my brother's friends, maybe more. And I kind of just like made getting cut really just like pushed me like, I'm going to get better at this. I'm going to get so good that I can't get cut again. And I
Mhm.
think that was kind of the idea. And I remember I would read a ton of Lax Goalie Rat, look on Instagram. I was watching drills. I watched a ton of college lacrosse.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of looking at everything I could do to make myself better, both with film, physically, mentally, and all of that. And that I had a significant, like, I grew a ton in that period before leading up to high school.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, when I coach the mental game, one of the things I talk about is like, finding just this really deep reason, this why, right? What really motivates you. And for so many athletes, it's that feeling of being cut, of being shorted, of being told like you can't do this. You're too small, you're too short, you're too this, you're too that. And that is a really strong motivator. And so that's cool that you're able to like, I'm going to be so good that they can't cut me, right? That's awesome. That's awesome. And it worked.
Yeah.
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 All right. That's what I like to hear. What other mental game lessons did was it Harry? Did he
Yes, Coach Harry Meredith.
Coach Harry Meredith? Did you guys talk about?
We we really got he was the first person who ever really introduced me to like the leadership aspect of the position.
Hmm.
I always knew like I always looked at it as like I was more the last line of defense, so to speak. So like everything kind of fell on me if like someone got through. So I think I didn't factor in the fact that there are other players on the field, there's defense and everything, and like I can't blame myself for every little goal. And one of the big things that he taught me was like it's the technical aspect. Like if you have a guy right on the doorstep on the crease and he just cranks one on you and scores, that's realistically not on you. There were plenty of people that maybe that's a great pass, great play. Maybe they got through your defense. But if you're getting shot on within 5 yards, great. If you steal one of those away, that's awesome. And that's a
Right.
big momentum game changer. But otherwise, like that's something that has got to be next play mentality on and keep your defense up mentally. Because if I'm getting down over that, then my defense feel responsible and you know how that goes, and it's just kind of the whole team falls down.
Yep. Yeah, that next play mentality. It's interesting in lacrosse because and other sports too, but in lacrosse we're like because you get scored on and then it's like there's a break, there's a huge pause, and it's the same thing as ice hockey, right? It's a huge pause and there's all this time to think. Whereas like you get scored on in basketball and even in like the game of sixes in lacrosse, you get scored on, like you just take the ball out and go. Like and the game just kind of keeps going. And it's like and that but that's how we need to be in the game of field lacrosse, right? You get scored on and regardless of whether it was a slam dunk or even maybe one that you should have had, right? It's that next play mentality, right? That play's got to be out of your mind. You got to have that same level of confidence and that same positivity with every single play. So that's cool that you recognize that. And it's not easy, right? It's not easy. I'm sure even with that lesson, there's times where like you give up a goal and you're like, geez, like I should have had that one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I definitely a big part of it was like, okay, how like am I making my friends look bad? Am I costing the team something? And it's kind of like you feel responsible when that ball goes in the net. Yeah, everyone knows that feeling that you feel responsible for it in some way. It doesn't matter if it was completely not your fault. You just like think, oh, maybe if I had done this,
Right.
then I could have stopped that ball. But I feel like once you start to think like that, like maybe if I had done that, you kind of dig yourself in a hole. So then I more started to think about it as like, okay, yeah, maybe I could have done that, but that's good to note for next time. That release, like the like
Yeah.
adjusting how I could have maybe saved that ball, and then just just kind of keep my defense up and get back in next play and to say, okay, I'm going to get the next one.
Yeah, it's like you're not saying I should have made that save because that's like thinking about the past, right? And you're kind of sort of lamenting about the past. What you're saying is like I can make that save. Like I'll make that save. So like the next one, the next shot mentality, like I'm gonna get that next one. I hope they shoot it like that again because I can get that. I'll get that one. That's
Mm-hmm.
the attitude. That I love that. Yeah. Cool. What would you say you're working on like actively right now in your goalie game?
A big thing that I'm working on recently is definitely my stepping. Before I was very like toes forward, very in tight, stick up like this, and it was more of like a shuffle to the side
Uh-huh.
with like a gather, but like literally like a straight shuffle. And I've really been recently like kind of like adapting, snapping my hip, getting my toes kind of pointed out more, and making
Yeah.
that step a just wide lateral step as opposed to like a shuffle,
Yeah.
and then following that through with the like a small gather, just to
Yep.
like bring the ball with me outside the cage. But yeah, like maintaining my surface area that way.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I mean I'm a huge fan of that sort of toes pointed out a little bit. And it's kind of like you're an ice hockey guy, right? Like I always say like if you're going to skate, like would do you want your toes pointed like straight ahead or would you like do you have your skates out like this? Like you move a lot better if they're at like a little bit of an angle. So I know every time I post something like that on Instagram, people are like, "No, don't do that. Like toes go straight." And I'm like, no, I like them out a little bit of an angle.
Yeah, I definitely feel much more power out of like my inside edge, so to speak.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
push
And
them
yeah,
often.
that's the thing. Like just try it and see like how if you feel more athletic or not. And it sounds like you do.
Yes,
Yeah,
most definitely do. That's
love it.
been a really big change for me.
Yeah, love it. I know you've been working with with Anderson Moore, who I had on the podcast maybe like 3 or 4 episodes ago. Talk to me about working with him and some of the things that he's taught you.
One of his largest emphasis, like with me, was getting my chest and my like bring my hips down to the ball because
On
I'd be
low
making these.
shots.
Yes,
Yeah,
on
yeah,
low
yeah, yeah.
shots.
Yeah.
Getting my hips down has always been one of my number one. Like if I could put a form problem, I think it's a common problem, but for low shots, getting my hips down, and I think a lot of it comes from just like leg strength in general and like not being comfortable doing that. But he helped me like he used this I don't know, it's like phrase like smell the ball. And that kind of like made me think, okay, if I can really get my face all the way down there, then naturally I'll have to bring my hips.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes when I do that, I stand straight up and I kind of like bend over to kind of like put my face to the ball.
Right.
Then it's like with like dropping my knee and getting down. He's just really helped maintaining just getting my hips down.
Yeah. Well, that's huge. Yeah, that's huge. I know the way I've heard it described and I like if your hips start on like level 2, right? When the shot goes down, they need to drop down to level 1. You can't, like you said, you can't just bend over at the waist. You got to get your whole body down there. So that's key. And did you guys do like specific drills or is it just like let's take low shots with that in mind?
We did a lot. We did one of the things we did was like turns from X.
Uh-huh.
So then I would go from I wouldn't know where he was. I'd turn from X and then I would like almost like track his voice a little bit, find him, find the ball, and he'd release and he'd really just be get down as fast as I can. And I think it was just like that habit of just drop your hips, rep after rep, and it really helps build it in pretty fast.
Yep.
And I've definitely gotten a lot better with it, and I'm kind of just trying to hammer it in with shots now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so much of it is just muscle memory, so that like you see that low shot, and you don't even really think about it. It's just like my hips sort of drop down and go. Very cool. Giancarlo, have you worked with any other coaches to help improve your goalie game?
Um, Goaliesmith has helped me tremendously. Coach Mike Gavazin and Andrew Vazin have like I've done some individual coaching with them and like over like online, and it was kind of just like individual form stuff. And I would send them film, kind of like an exchange. Watch all their videos, and I've been to three Goaliesmith sessions now in the past 4 months. So that was kind of that's been absolutely amazing. The one in IMG was one of the most baller experiences of my life, and it's probably one of my lacrosse highlights. So they've helped me amazing, like a ton.
That's awesome. If someone's listening and they've never been to a Goaliesmith event, like talk them through it. How would you describe it?
It really makes you realize how big of a community lacrosse goalie actually is. Like it's this you go there, there's a ton of goalies your age, some like a year or two older than you, a year or two younger than you. You're all in the same place. Super competitive atmosphere, and it's basically just nonstop drills for 90 minutes, and like it's just like in games, and like you get into little groups and compete with each other, and it's kind of like everyone's picking each other up, everyone's teaching each other new things. You can look at the goalies around you, learn from them. It's really amazing, and it's kind of just like makes you realize the goalie community is there for you, and everyone helps each other.
Love it. Yeah, those guys are, I think, the best coaches that we got going right now. And I've never been to one of their events, but I've talked with them and worked with them a ton, and they're awesome. So yeah, huge shout out to Goaliesmith. And then you're going to be playing with your club team this summer. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I'm really grateful. True Illinois gave me an opportunity to play for them, and I played in Baltimore for them, and I'll be playing for them all fall. Um, Coach Kyler Berkman is my head coach. Amazing coach, great guy. And yeah, so I'll be playing with them all fall, and it's going really well. So I'm grateful.
Awesome, man. Well, good luck with them this fall. Very cool. You mentioned earlier watching a lot of college lacrosse. Which goalies do you like to watch?
Obviously Anderson's amazing.
Yeah.
Michael Giancarlo, I really
Yeah.
like his style and his form. I feel like I just kind of relate to like his stature. I've just always found his play style kind of very similar to mine. Obviously we all love Liam Enemann's hand speed and just overall he's amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I learned a lot from Patrick Moore too, Anderson's brother. He's
Mm.
amazing too. But those four I've watched all their highlight. Like I watched a lot of stuff. I've definitely focused on Michael and Anderson a lot.
Love it. I saw a picture of Patrick Moore, and I didn't know that it was Anderson Moore's brother. But when I first saw this picture, and like the stance was so similar to Anderson's, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. It like looks like they're brothers, and they were. It's so funny how they have like such identical stances, the way they, and it's beautiful stance. Like if
Yeah,
you're gonna
it's
pick a stance to replicate as a young goalie, like that to me, that's it. It's just I love it. So athletic, just like so balanced, ready to go. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah. So Mike Gianforcaro, he's got that real wide base. Do you play with like a wide base? And so does Liam for that matter. Do you play
yes.
like that or no?
When I started, I was super, super narrow.
Yeah.
And then getting my toes out, like I read a lot of your stuff. I've kind of just like watching Liam Edelman style, watching these goalie styles. I'm like, maybe I should try this. It would help. I was thinking like, okay, I read like it'll help with getting down for low shots because you're already bringing your base lower.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not exactly tall. I'm like almost 5'9", but I think that a lot of those guys, like Liam Enemann's obviously a giant. So like he's able to go as wide as he needs to be
Yeah.
while keeping his head at like a decent level.
Right.
But I started bringing my legs wider when I brought my toes out. And I think that I liked that a lot for getting to low saves. But I also felt that like my mobility was a little bit decreased. And I think a lot of that's just a lack of leg strength again was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Like hip strength in general. But yeah, mainly when I brought my toes out.
Yeah, I'm 5'8" myself, so like I could never do that wide base. I don't even know if I knew about it back in 2000, the year 2000 when I was playing, because wasn't as many resources as there are today. But even if I did know about it, I don't think I could do it all that well. But I do like I see some goalies go like shoulder width, and to me that's too narrow. Like I don't know, I
Yeah.
just feel like outside of shoulder width makes you a lot more athletic.
Yeah, shoulder width, I feel like makes me almost feel like kind of like tense because
Yeah.
like it's hard to like get kind of like out of that quickly. Whereas when I'm wide, I do feel like I can. Well, I feel like I have to move less because you're obviously closer to the pipes,
Right.
but you're kind of just like always loaded, I guess. Like you're always kind of loaded and ready to go, as opposed to when you're straight up, you have to go all the way down to the ground and like I don't know. It just seems faster.
I think it is. I think it is faster. And like if I could do the wide base, I would. Like that I
Definitely.
think the wide base is the best way to play because like do you think it's easier to make a 5-hole save or a save that's like off stick low?
Like in general,
Yeah,
probably 5 hole just because I can
exactly.
drop.
Exactly. 5-hole I think is a lot easier. And when you do the wide base, like everything's 5-hole, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, you open up the 5-hole, but especially when they're shooting from an angle, like when they're not, top center, they're like top right, and they see less of the cage. In the wide base, your feet are sort of pipe and pipe, right? So like everything's 5-hole and everything's on your frame. And I think I think that's why Liam has so much success. But you do have to have that height. You got to have that height.
And I did
Um,
notice that the second that I made that change, there was a good month and a half period where I just noticed, I think, oh yeah, that's going to go out, and I still try to get there, but I was just getting poked on about an inch or two by the post.
yeah,
And it was just like too high because I brought myself like 3 inches down by getting wider.
yeah, love it. We worked together a little bit in my little 6-week coaching program that I put on. So thank you for doing that. I'd love to talk about that a little bit. What'd you think? What'd you learn?
That was great. That
Yeah,
especially for mental game, I loved. You we talked about that for a while. And really just like the overall role of goalie and like the other aspects of it, like clearing and like being a leader and things like that, other than just saving the ball. That was, I feel like, a pretty big emphasis, but that kind of opened my mind up of, okay, what else should I be working on? And
yeah,
since that, I've definitely looked up a ton about goalie communication, kind of like universal terms, things like that. Just trying to be able to better lead and like guide my defense on the field.
yeah.
That was a big thing.
Well, cool. I appreciate that, and I also appreciated you. I mean, there was like some interaction too, and I've since run that class 2 more times and never had that. So thank you for like you were speaking up and like helping coaching other goalies. And I think when you do that, it helps yourself, right? Like when you coach others, you're really coaching yourself. Like so, I teach you a mental game lesson, and then when I go out there personally, like that lesson's in my head, and I need to then apply it. And so, yeah, thanks for doing that.
Of course.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, going back to the 6 weeks, I mean, I think a lot of like so much emphasis on coaching goalies is making the saves, right? And the stance and the positioning and the save movement. And it's important. It's very important. And I talk about that week one, but yeah, there's all the other stuff of like the mental game, and we talk about the communication and even the physical exercises. Like I think um I think there's a lot of training specifically, like you mentioned, even like getting some strength in my hips, right? And having that flexibility in my hips to get down to those low shots. So I think there's a specific way that goalies could train. And oftentimes that's not like it's not talked about. Um, and then what else we cover? Communication, and then yeah, a bunch of drills. So yeah, cool. Well, I appreciate the kind words for that program.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah. Awesome. You just started like a couple years ago, but if you had to go back and give the real young you advice about lacrosse goalie, what would you say?
Time outside of practice is absolutely everything. Get shot on by as many people as often as you can, and like the best people that you can, older kids. That was something that I did adapt pretty fast because all my brother's friends played lacrosse pretty much, and they would always just shoot on me. And like, so I'd go from seeing their super fast shots, seeing my age level shots, and it was just much easier.
Mm.
And I'd also definitely say like in terms of the mental game, you got to lead your team out there, and you kind of have to set your team's morale in order to keep your energy in that game. And it doesn't matter how much you're down, you need to always keep them. You can't just like give up early like that and really like let your team down. You need to be there for your team to keep them picked up and have a shot at coming back.
Yeah. On that topic, what do you do? I'm sure you've had a day, a practice where you just like you're not feeling it, right? You just I don't know, for whatever reason, you don't got the energy. You don't feel like, I don't know, you had a bad day at school or what have you, didn't sleep good. whatever. I'm sure you've had a day like that. What do you do on those days? When to your point, like I do think the goalies need to be the leader and set the tone, but what do you do when you have those days?
I definitely try to do something I'm comfortable with. Like I usually have the same group of friends or like coach that warms me up throughout my season or whatever like team I'm on are doing. And sometimes I'll like de-stress, I'll talk about other things while I'm warming up and kind of just like make sure everything's consistent. And I have a pretty like regimen, like warm up's pretty much always the same. But I try to just like not think about anything else in my day, just like be like I'm at lacrosse right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my break and just try to enjoy it as much as I can. And like,
Mm.
okay, even if I'm letting some in, I just want to make sure that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And I always find that like if I'm really having fun, it'll be the best game of my life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That's one of the mental game lessons we talked about in that course is gratitude, right? It's like, when you can just be grateful that I'm out there, right? And having like just have fun and like doesn't matter what happened during the day, like just now I get to play this beautiful game with my friends and man, isn't that awesome, right? And just kind of being grateful for that and it gives you this new perspective and now it's like now I approach it with this whole new attitude. I like that. The other thing you can do too, I mean, like there's no, I think everyone understands that you're gonna have a bad day. Um, and if you got that trusted friend or teammate and like, say, hey man, like I'm just not feeling today. Like I need you to be pumping me up all day long, right? Like sort of giving him that heads up that like you're not feeling it. So he knows, and then he's got your back, right? And he's just kind of constantly lifting you up. I've heard goalies tell me that, and I think that works pretty well.
I do. I've never actually told someone, but my coach used to always warm me up. Because he warmed me up so often, he could tell if even the slightest thing was wrong.
Yeah,
He'd be
that's
like,
good.
"Why are you acting like that?" And he kind of just like knock it out of me and like get me back in my flow. And then he'd like get me smiling again, and all of a sudden, I'd be warming up. I'd be playing well, and like he just kind of helped me just kind of reset, forget everything else, get back to what I'm used to, and just like play for my team and have a good time. And I think that he really helped me a lot. Like just in the warm ups is just kind of my way of just forget about everything else and reset and get ready.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome. What about a slump? Have you gone through a slump yet? And if so, like how did you go about getting out of it?
Um, After my high school season ended, going into summer, I was doing really, really well, but I was making a lot of changes in my form because like I had a lot of free time on my hands.
Hmm.
I was getting shot on a lot, so I was still just kind of looking for things to change to like make me faster, make me better. But it kind of felt like I'd move, I'd do one thing to make a change that would help me in one place, but then I'd be like sacrificing someone somewhere else. Like if I'm getting my wider feet to get lower faster, then I'm sacrificing those high saves. And then I was like, from that period from pretty much most of July, I was really just working on a ton of things at once. And like I feel like one thing led to me to change another thing. So I didn't feel consistent. Like before I'd taken a shot in every area and it was always the same movement, but
Yeah.
I felt like kind of all over the place.
Right.
But then after just kind of repping those out and kind of establishing one set form again, that helped me just like pull myself back out of that and get my muscle memory back.
Yeah. Yeah, because like lacrosse goalie it's like one of repetition, right? You're sort of doing the same, set of movements over and over, kind of like a baseball pitcher or a baseball swing, right? It's just repeating that same movements and it's very easy to get out of whack, right? Like even if you don't want to change anything, like you have no intention of changing anything, like all of a sudden, whether you realize it or not, like your hands are like way lower than you've had them set up before. And so like being able to replicate that same style over and over is like very important for goalies. And then to your point, like if you want to change something, great, but like one at a time so I can kind of like get it used to that, if I can get used to that, and that can become the norm. And then I can even know if it's working, right? Because sometimes you make a change and like it's not, I don't feel as athletic, but if you're doing all these changes at once, you're like, well, which one was it? Right?
Yeah, I think definitely like end of June, I was like, okay, I'm learning so much. I'm just gonna go, 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 make all these changes.
Yeah.
I'm getting shot on, and it's like yeah, let's change everything and like be the best I can. I have all this time. I want to grow as fast as I can. But I was just like, okay, great. I'm changing this, but then I'm forgetting what I learned last week, and then I'm falling into this bad habit to make this more comfortable. And I
Right.
kind of just fell into bad habits. And then towards the end of July, I realized, okay, yeah, I need to take this one piece at a time and just kind of like change one thing, and great.
Yeah, love it. Love it. What about pregame rituals? You got any pregame rituals that you always go through?
I always, well, depending on how I'm feeling, I always drink like the same amount of water. I have this water bottle. I'll drink at least like depending on when the time is, like within 18 or so hours of when I'm playing a game, I'll drink like three of them. I make sure basically just drinking a ton of water. When I
Mm-hmm.
get to the physical field, I'll just start off with like my stretches. I kind of have like the same like pigeon stuff like that, stretches on the ground, and I'll do more like dynamic like movement stretching, like high knees stuff like that. And then before I get in the cage for like my first shots, I'll do like bands. You know those bands you can put around your like knees and ankles? I'll just do some of those and I kind of just do my steps, like 10 or 15 each way. Because then I get in the cage and I'm moving super fast laterally. I always
Mm-hmm.
notice that. Like after taking away the resistance, I just move faster.
Yeah.
And then I'll just do my warm up, high, medium, like high hip, low, and then all over, and then I'm kind of good.
Love it. Did Anderson tell you what his pregame ritual is?
I forget.
Maybe he didn't tell you. He's in the weight room. He does
Oh
cleans.
yes,
He does cleans in the
yes,
weight
he
in the weight
enjoys
room.
clean. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Get a little pump in before the game. I remember that.
Yeah. He gets that pump in, and I'm like, all right, man. I don't know if I've ever heard that, but whatever works for you.
I've
Um,
definitely noticed that if I lift like back the day before I play lacrosse and my forearms are like cooked, it's so hard to move. So like when I
yeah,
heard him say that, I was like, I don't even know how you. I guess it gets your blood pumping, but if I'm sore, like that definitely impacts me.
right. Well, I don't think he goes too heavy. That
Yeah,
was the
but he
thing. Like
enjoys
it's
it.
just yeah, yeah. It's funny. All right, man. Yeah. What about the current? What about your stick setup? What are you going with these days?
I right now just have I have an impact head with a carbon pro because my shaft broke. I had a hyperlight. That's by far my favorite shaft I've ever used. I had a
Yeah.
hyperlight with an impact, which I switched for a carbon pro because it broke, and that was all that was available. I was at a tournament, and then I have impact mesh with two V shooters.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of messing around with it. I had my backup stick as two traditional cross, and then I've been experimenting. I want to try like a single short V towards the bottom because I threw with Anderson's and I really, really like that. I know I just like how it releases and I like the rebound control around the top because I feel
Yeah.
like the two sometimes you get that kind of trampoline type thing at the top. Um, but I like it. I'm comfortable with it. I've really never changed it. That's kind of always what I've had, so I
It's
haven't
a
changed
light.
it.
It's a light setup, right? I have that one right there is the impact with impact mesh, and then I have a just the lightest String King shaft that they have. And it's like 135 grams, and it's like attack length, right? And I love it. It just feels so light in my hands. That's what I love about that. That's what I love about that setup. Cool. Well, Carlo, thanks for coming on the show. Good luck in your upcoming high school season. I'm rooting for you, bud. If you had to leave the goalies out there with a final piece of advice, what would that be?
Keep your head up out there and just always remember that this is a gift and you just really got to enjoy every second you have on the field because at the end of the day, you just got to be having fun out there in order to play at your best.
Very well said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.